Welcome back to the 7-Figure Music School podcast. We've got a special episode for you today. In early December of 2023, we hosted a meetup at Brooklyn Music Factory. And it was kind of at the last minute, but we still had a number of music school owners show up for an event that Nate and I hosted. And we met folks there for a tour of BMF. Nate talked about the programs that BMF offers to the community. He talked about the strategy. There was a question and answer period. And during that day, for some of the day, we actually turned on some cameras and filmed and recorded the tour, the strategy session, and the Q&A. Today's episode is a small excerpt of some of the footage that we got from that day, specifically a question that was asked by one of the attendees about commercial leases. And Nate and another attendee there spent a long time talking about their experiences with negotiating leases for a music school location. And while we have covered that topic in the past, Nate had some really unique comments and some stories that he's never shared before in the podcast. So I'm recording this special opening to kind of tee up what you're about to see, because it's very different from our normal format. And I will even say that if you typically listen to the podcast, I would maybe head over to YouTube and search for the Grow Your Music Studio channel and just take a look at the video, because we actually hosted this event, or at least part of this event, in the lobby of Brooklyn Music Factory. It's a really gorgeous space. And if you've ever wondered what the inside of BMF looks like, you'll actually get to see Nate and myself and some of the guests who were there that day as we did this Q&A. Now, in a couple of weeks, we're actually going to release another segment from that same day. And it was a longer Q&A period where a number of really interesting questions were asked. So definitely check that out 2 weeks from now. But thank you for tuning in, and enjoy this clip about negotiating for commercial space for your music school.
Let's just dive right in and try to tackle some of these. Commercial leases, what is of interest? Let's try to get more specific. What aspect of commercial leases?
I think you were just saying at the time what topics aren't everyone's minds. And
yeah, okay.
I just talked about it, so I'm going to say I wasn't more specific in that moment.
Okay.
I think maybe your top 3 or whatever tips, or 1 or whatever, for people, somebody like myself that knows nothing about it. What should I definitely do or not do?
Nice. Maybe Melanie and I will go back and forth, because we both have spent some time in that world. You down, Melanie?
Yeah, of course, but you start.
Okay. My first top tip is that this is a relational business, and that if you intend to negotiate a long-term commercial lease that is meaningful, then you do it the same way you would anything that matters in your life, finding a great doctor, etc. So you go out and you however you would work your network, you do the exact same thing here, right? That's how this place evolved. It came through network, through a friend of mine who had a co-working space with these landlords. He introduced us. From there, I figured out who all the players were through research, realized, David, one of the partners is on the board at the Brooklyn Conservatory. He studies jazz piano with an old friend of mine. It just goes like that. And so then when I showed up to my initial hello meeting, it was just like, David, how are lessons going? They have a grand piano in their office. I sat down, I played, I was like, play for me, So it's just like, you just develop it, right? And then because you're figuring out, just like anything that matters in life, you're figuring out whether it's going to be mutually beneficial, right? You're not like, I need you to get me something. I need you to give me something, i.e. a 12-year lease, right? What you're actually doing is saying, like, is this a relationship that is going to be, like, am I going to benefit you, or are you going to benefit me? Or in this case, we, and so that's my tip number 1. Treat it just like you would anything else that matters in your life. Long-term relationships you're going to develop, etc. Melanie, what do you got for a...
Well, I'll dig deeper with that, my contractor that I use has been with me for 10 years. Love what we do. Yeah, it's so special. He only builds recording studios, and us, whenever I call him, he's like there looking at real estate with me. And my first real estate lawyer, really wonderful and invested in what we did. But I never achieved that with a landlord, and both of the deals fell through.
But you have two pieces of the team.
I have two pieces, so I have everybody ready to go once I build that relationship with the landlord. Although my landlord right now really does love us, just not like I want a long-term lease, and I don't have. Yeah.
Can I ask you, what kind of lease structure do you have in your place?
We're month to month, and that's why part of why I wanted out. We're right on the water. All of those towers are going up. The Willentis family is like huge in Brooklyn, and it's like this building's gonna get torn down, and there's gonna be a tower someday, but not tomorrow. So I'm fine right now.
Okay, so then you bring up a good number 2 tip for me, which is that it takes a team. And let me describe some of the players on the team. So Melanie already pointed out really important members. Actually, you were asking about members of the team before. So you need your contractor, and you put it perfectly. Like Jimmy, who did this space, he'll always pick up my call. He's just a lovely human, and I'm sure that I'm going to do work with them again. You need your GC, you need some version of an attorney. That's a piece that's been really hard for me, Melanie. I should probably actually get some advice from you on that, because
I'll send you the guy.
I would love that, because we've struggled with attorneys, actually. I've had them, when I needed to get out of the lease, I found the kind of attorney that's like, will go to the mat for you, cut throat, pay him $2,500, he'll be done by the end of the day. But I was like, I don't know if long-term I want to work with you, dude. And then that happened again when we negotiated this. The attorney we had, I was like, actually, didn't feel great. So I'm missing that piece.
I only didn't get the guy the second time because he was on paternity leave. So he's back in the game.
He's back in the game. Love it.
Yeah.
So GC, attorney, architect. Here's the thing, and I mean, you can speak better than me, is that when we're taking any project, and this is a big one, you want to know exactly what you have to offer and where you have massive knowledge gaps. And if you think you're going to design it all yourself, you're going to get what you get. It's not going to end up looking like this. That's for sure. If I had designed it, it would not have ended up looking like this, right? So you get those pieces. Then another piece you have is that, like, when you're negotiating a lease, so what role am I playing? I'm playing the last slide that you guys saw, the vision of where we're going to be in 2030. I'm the pitch guy. My purpose is to go in there and be like, help them develop faith in the next 12 years with Brooklyn Music Factory as a core tenant. That's actually my purpose. The other part for me, so you need a pitch person. You need someone who's actually going to go in there and be prepared, right? This is true for negotiating anything, but in this case, you're negotiating on a lease like this. I'm negotiating like $2 million. That's what we owe them over 12 years, $2.5 million or something. So that's a boatload of money to me, So I'm like, I'm negotiating that, but I knew that this would be the right space for us in terms of location, geographic, all the clear markers,
I was going to say, how do you define prepared billion truths?
Okay, so great question. So, and I can share a version of this. So I created a book just for them, designed it. And it looked and felt like it used a lot of our branding, our assets. Well, when we get to the branding question, Kirk, we'll talk more about this. But it had our mission, it had our purpose, it had our financials in a simple, easy, like where we were in growth year over year, enrollment, dollars. it had what we offer, like Mini Keys Jam Band 101. It had who we serve. It has why we serve them. And it had a picture of the space. Imagine this space in your building. So it had that architect rendering I was telling you about. It had a picture of our old space. This is where we were coming from. And then it had a clear punch list of what we intended to build. It's like, this is the number of classrooms, da-da-da-da-da. This is what we anticipated it'll cost, etc. So we'd like gone through, and it showed what it shows is that you've put deep thought into what you intend to do there, right? You're not just looking for a place. You're not like, we lost our old place, I'm looking for a new place. You're like, no, we want to be in your space, and here's what it could look like in your space. You know, obviously I didn't have their floor plans at that time, but, and so when it's a full color printed book, and I'm handing it to all 4 members of the team, and I'm like, and they look at it and they said, I remember one of them was like, whoa, those are, really? You're going to serve 100,000 students by 2030? Those are some big dreams. And I was like, yeah, we're going to do it in your space. You know, we're like, and you're going to help us get there. And that's why I think this is going to be great. You know, other things that you prepare for is like, so if you're a music school moving into like the rest of this building isn't necessarily music schools. Like there's a wellness center, there's a dentist, there's like 3 architecture offices, there's a financial services office. There's actually a recording studio on the 8th floor, but he's 70 years old and been very successful. He's the guy who was in Tommy Two-Tone and wrote 8675309 now 1. But his studio's up there, so they were fine with him being there because this was his like last swan. He's like, I'm going to build one more play space and that's it, you know. But the point, and he knows exactly what he's doing, right? So the other piece to being prepared and pitching is that you're not going to be something other than who you are. And for us, we're like, if you want hundreds of families coming and going from your space every single week, then we're the place for you. We're a family-focused community building center. That's what we do. So if is that the right fit for your building? Then we're exactly who you should put in here. So that's it. You know, like what if they were like, actually, no, we want a Gap and we want like 2 more State Farm insurance places. You know, like that's the most buzzkill possible tenant you could have is a State Farm insurance space. You know what I mean? Like
Shots fired.
Yeah, I'm just saying in terms of like if you're at Hip Gowanus, like in Dumbo, like, you know what I mean? Like your neighbor, Williamsburg is like, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like stylized, as you know, to the level. And then imagine just being like, no, actually, we're going to put in a State Farm insurance here. Like you can't even fathom it, actually. But they did put it in there because that's insurance for them. Like they get an easy tenant that they know will always make rent. No worries there, right? So initially, we were going to have that space, and we were going to have a coffee shop, and there was going to be a door through here going in. And that was one of the dreams I had to let go of. Like, I was so into it. Like, my mom had a cafe for 2 years, and it was a train wreck of a business, but I grew up in it, and I loved it. And I was like, this is going to be super vibey, you know? And then they wouldn't do it to it. That was one of the negotiating pieces. I said, okay, I'll let go of that, and then they gave us the lease here. Okay, the last piece of preparing, and then back to you, Melanie, for your next tip, is financials. You have to know why you can afford this and what you can afford. So someday, Daniel and I are going to get our act together and do like a deep dive financial fluency piece on forecasting your business. You know, I did a 10-year forecast for this space, but even if you had a 3 to 5 year forecast that was healthy, that you trusted, like it doesn't matter the scale. You have to be a 7-figure music school like BMF. It's irrelevant. The point is you have to actually have the tools and be able to forecast out with some level of authority so that when you walk into that meeting, you're like, yes, You're not like just tossing out a number that you think you can afford to pay every year to rent. Yeah, you're not. Yeah, exactly. Like maybe like Shark Tank, but so that's the last piece of prep, is just being pretty damn clear. And I got help. Like I got a friend of mine who was a consultant who had been at E-Trade for a long time, and he had left his gig, and now he was helping some small business owners, and he helped me with a 10-year forecast. So I had all the numbers, but I needed help with this idea of like really, how do you do 10 years? I didn't know how to flash, send it all the way out with some level of confidence. And just as a side little note is the one number I was looking at as I was doing these percentages, because we know enrollment, like let's say it's your studio and you're like, here's my jam. I'm going to be a one teacher studio that operates 3 days a week. Like maybe you're like, that's my vision. Then that's what you do. Okay, dig it. Okay, good. So that's your right now.
Yeah.
And maybe you're like, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm not ever going to go above 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And I don't want to employ others. Like, that's my vision. Well, okay. So then you're pretty clear on your inventory. You know how many you can enroll, because that's a pretty easy calculus, right? But then you're like, and I'm essentially just going to raise my rates by X percent every 2 years or every year. So now it gets pretty easy for you to calculate out 10 years, right? In terms of the lease, the one line item I was looking at was what's the percentage of the total amount of cash you'll bring in your studio that you're willing to put towards the lease. And for me, since we've been at it for, 12 years at this time, I knew what our percentage was. We'd been between like 10 and 14 or 15% had been going to rent. And my long-term objective was, in the new space, I wanted to get that down to like 8, 7, even 6%. That was the long-term goal, because if you carve out that percentage, now all of a sudden you can afford things like healthcare for employees, which is like a huge thing on our docket, being able to sort of benefit our employees even more than we do. So if you can get that, like carve that at few percentage points, then you can invest in something else, right? And so when I was going into prep, that's what I was preparing. Like, what's the percentage variant? When they're like, no, we won't give it to you at this rent, but we will give it to you at that, then I would be like, let me get back to you. And I would just go to that spread. Actually, I pulled the spreadsheet up with them in the room, and I just plugged in the number, and I was like, let me look. Why do you think I pulled the spreadsheet up with them in the room and pulled it in? Back to our pitch point. Why do you think I did that? Show you're prepared. Show is prepared?
I mean, yeah, and also to show that, like,
If you say no right there, then it also like gives you more negotiation too. Like
A lot.
yeah, more leverage maybe. Like if you're doing that literally, like in the room with them.
Yeah, and I think I understand what you're saying. You're saying if I had just said no and walked away, but instead I'm saying, well, let's look together.
yeah, I mean, like then you're kind of inviting them into it, and I think that that's just
Going to be a lot stronger than like going away and then sending them an email the next day because this is
Yes, and I do much better like this. I know how I operate. Put me in person with someone, and everybody's more comfortable, especially me. Put me via email. Like I was watching you work this morning, you're just like ripping through a week of back emails. And I'm like, that's not Nate. Like, I was like, dude, someday you need to show me. I was like, how do you show me how you do that? But so I'm operating in a sphere that feels comfortable to me, right? I'm showing that I'm prepared. And then the last piece is I'm showing there's an element of transparency and vulnerability. So I'm establishing what the relationship will be like for the next 12 years. I'm like, let's just do this together. I don't have anything to hide. I'm telling you who we are. Here's a book. This is what we are, who we are, and what we plan to do. And boom, I have this mega spreadsheet that I've been chipping away at for like 6 months. How about we look at it together? The other fascinating piece about this around negotiations, and I have a really good negotiation book if anybody wants a recommendation, that that I read in preparation to this.
What is it?
I looked it up. Can I give you? Yeah, can I give it to you later? Because I have to then start digging through the digital.
We'll put that in the show notes. Bethany, find that book, please.
Yeah, thanks, Bethany. The other last piece that's fascinating is, remember when I said who's a numbers person and who raised their hand? Melanie, one person, right? Do you think this answer would be the same in that meeting? Yes, there's only one numbers person there. You don't build a team of like 4 numbers people. Why? You don't need 4 numbers people, right? So when I was there, the one person, David, who was taking the piano lessons, he's the numbers guy. And so he also happens to be blind, right? So I open up the spreadsheet, and like the other guys on the team, they don't even know what I'm doing, because that's not what they do, right? But David appreciates it, and he can't even see it, right? But he knows what I'm doing, because that's what he does, right? He's the business development guy. So anyways, that's another fascinating piece, because it actually puts you back into leverage comment. It actually puts you in an interesting advantage.
Maybe that's some of the word I was thinking of, but.
Oh, dig it. Yeah. Okay. That's all I have to say about that. That was a really long answer. Melanie, other thoughts?
I mean, I have maybe a couple more things, but does somebody have a question that would help me?
Yeah, I always like having the question.
Yeah, is there a question that I can answer?
Might have been where do you teach and like, because I had missed the intros.
Yeah, I have a music school in Williamsburg, so not far from here. Yeah.
But also far from here.
Also far from here. A long time to get there.
A long time to get here, but not very far.
Yeah. So does anybody have a question? Wait, so I mean, yeah, I wish that I had you guys as coaches when I was negotiating the first lease, because it maybe wouldn't have pulled apart listening to you talk about that, because that's pretty much what happened. Now, it was contentious the entire time. It was a really, really tough negotiation, and it fell apart in the end because they had no idea how much square footage they were giving me. And at the last, final hour, they wanted $700 more a month. And I was like, because they were like, oh, but we're giving you the space, and we didn't realize. That's not my fault. I submitted my floor plans 4 months ago. And if I did meet with them several times in person, and they were trying to sell me on various things. And I kept talking about my budget and, what we do and what I need to stick with, because it was a very lateral move as far as space goes. I wasn't increasing my potential for revenue. I was just securing a longer lease, and we just weren't away. Everybody just weren't away. So, but yeah, it was like a 75-page lease and they wanted me to do background checks on everybody who walked through the door. It was just like
including clients.
And pretty
oh my goodness,
walked through the door. So it was really interesting, your podcast that you did with Vera. She said something that when you were talking about building that performance space, she said, well, you kind of have to be dumb to do things. And I'm not dumb anymore. Like, I know what I'm getting myself into when I take on a new space. So I think that's part of why the other 2 deals fell through, because the enormity. And do you want to work with those people who are adding $700 on in the final hour? Do you want to work with those people who want you to sign a lease before the, what's the word that I'm looking at? The stop work order is lifted off of the building. And the answer is no, but that's how much I could afford in Williamsburg. You don't have $12,000 a month. You don't have a ton of leverage. Yeah, so finding somebody who cares about what you're doing. I don't think I ever found a landlord who cared. My landlords right now love me, so pay me rent. And that's the other advantage of showing a spreadsheet. You can show I pay my rent.
Ooh.
I have lost spaces before it got to serious contract negotiation, because they were like, oh, this music studio in the building doesn't pay their rent, so you probably won't either.
Yes.
That's not your story.
Yeah.
That's not your story, and they need to know that, right?
But sometimes you're breaking down a lot of barriers with people when they have assumptions, and how do you get into the room to do that?